Good afternoon, everyone. Tony Saraceno here. This is the Tony Saraceno Baseball Show. If you like what I've got to say, feel free to hit the subscribe button, and I'm not taking any chances. It's either on one of these two sides. So hit subscribe if you like what I got to say. Today is the day after Independence Day, July 4th. Today's July 5th, Sunday. I want to wish everybody a very great weekend and hope everything's going very well this weekend. And I hope that your Independence Day was a good one. All right, we do live in a great country. I hope it's not always perfect, but I hope everybody had a really good weekend and appreciated the fact that here we are in the United States and can take time off and have enough leisure time to enjoy our country's 250th birthday. Hopefully you didn't get stuck watching the Met game or any of the Met games. We all know it now, but I'm going to officially. It's now. I'm giving it's the no point of return here. The season's over. Okay, the Mets are now finished. They're 36-53. I'm watching a game right now. Nolan McLean just gave up 2 runs in the first inning, and then tried to pick off the base runner, and it turned into a 2-base error. Nor did he go over and back up third base. So to sound, listen, this has been very redundant. I take no joy in a lot of this. I think everybody saw this coming. My first podcast, I believe, was May 11th, which was 2 months ago, over 2 months ago now. Oh, no, it'll be 2 months next week. And I really think a blind man could have seen this coming. We did listen to Steve Cohen come on. I said that I liked him. And without getting revved up about it, I thought that I took away the one very important aspect from it all was that I think if he could have fired he's not firing David Stern because David Stern's got 2.5 years left on his contract. They fired Mendoza because Mendoza's contract was up. That's it. I've attacked the Met coaches. I've attacked David Stearns. This is what it looks like. If you're watching the Met game today, this is what it looks like when you have a team that is not well coached, not from even a fundamental standpoint, but also from the coaches are the coaches and the manager is the manager. And there's a level of authority that has to come down, and there are rules that have to be enforced. And it's obvious that none of this has happened or been enforced, and this is what you get from it, okay? This doesn't happen in football, okay? Coaches coach and tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, you're gone. I mean, there's maybe 10 NFL players, maybe 15 that could overrule a coach, but if the coach is qualified, the player's gone. They don't keep him around. No way. Doesn't happen. So the Mets season is over. There's no coming back from any of it. So where do we go from here? And it's kind of, again, they're going to be sellers, but they've got nothing to sell. So I try to come up, this is going to be my last podcast where I'm going to have to start bringing stuff up about Felix Millan. Okay. That's the old story, which is that Joe Torre tells when he hit in the 4 double plays in one game. And he said, I couldn't have done it without Felix Millan, who went 4 for 4 in front of him. I can start bringing up stories like that. I could tell you about some of the worst Met trades in history. Everybody's got a favorite. I will give you personally, you could say Nolan Ryan, and it's obviously, it was a Hall of Famer for Jim Fregosi. But I have a favorite, one that is everybody's got Tom Seaver for, the Mets got back some talent there when they traded Seaver. It wasn't a good trade, but they didn't get fleeced. They got Doug Flynn back, who was a Gold Glove second baseman for them. Okay, they got back Steve Henderson in that trade, who played left field for them. He wasn't a bad player. I think they got Pat Zachary in that deal. So they got some players, and Dan Norman was in that deal. I think Henderson was in that deal. I know Zachary and I know Doug Flynn were in that deal. Okay, so it's a bad trade for the Mets because they traded, their franchise, but they got back talent. I do have a trade where the Mets gave up a terrific player okay, and got nothing back. He was a disaster for the Mets, and I'm going to tell you who it was. It was Mickey Lolich. The Mets traded in, I want to say 1975. They traded Rusty Staub for Mickey Lolich, and I've always felt that's one of my favorite underrated bad Met trades that they've done in their life. I'm not counting the Alonso one. I will say that I believe the Brandon Nimmo trade will be, I think you can make an argument. If Nimmo goes 4 years with the Rangers and goes 20-70 and a 265 batting average for 4 years, which again, I say this all the time, 260 is like a 280. You can make an argument that's at least in the top, I want to say top 15 bad trades all time for the Mets. I'll say that one is definitely up. That's definitely number. It'd be maybe even the top 10. You know, we can talk about some other bad trades. Remember the Lenny Dykstra for Juan Samuel trade? You know, I know Lenny was a train wreck, okay, but Lenny was a unique ball player. And I do believe Lenny did steroids. I don't believe Lenny is a good person, but he was a very, very, very fascinating ball player. And if you've ever had a chance to read Moneyball, I believe it's a book by, it's not Sokolov. I forget who wrote Moneyball. It's not a true book per se, but it's a good book because it was it cracked into the analytics in a commercial way beyond Bill James. And what they were talking about, which was fascinating, is when Billy Beane was in the minor leagues, he was drafted by the Mets in the first round, second pick of the first round. Dal Strawberry was their first pick that year. And he was rooming with Lenny Dykstra. And Billy Beane, here's experience, folks. This is what experience means when you have it, like the Met coaches who don't have it. Billy Beane, being in baseball, roomed with Lenny Dykstra. And he saw what a major league mindset looks like. Okay, Lenny was, there'd be Steve in the book. I'll quote from the book. He had, Steve Carlton would be on the mound, and he would say, Lenny Dykstra would ask Billy Beane who's pitching, and he'd say it's Steve Carlton, and Lenny go, well, what's he got? And Billy Beane would be like, speak honestly, this is one of the greatest left-handers of all time. He's got a wicked slider and, a great fastball. And Dykstra would just look at him and just say something like, fuck it, I'll rip him. Like he didn't care. Okay, that's a major league. Billy Beane got the line, that's a future major leaguer. And he summed it up very interesting. He said, a really professional athlete is able to forget every failure and draw strength off of every success. And I think that's a really good line. It doesn't mean don't learn from the failure, but it is it's a great line because there's so much failure in it, you can't let it eat at you. And I don't think Dykstra ever lost any confidence. So you got to learn what it was like to have a major league mindset. That's why Billy Beane was a good general manager. You could see that in other players, and that's experience. But anyway, I digress a little bit, because I've got to fill 15 minutes today on the Mets, who absolutely stink. So there's a little story for you about Lenny Dykstra, and I would definitely say that the Samuel trade is the Lenny Dykstra for Juan Samuel trade is definitely one of the worst trades in Met history. If you have a trade that you think is worse than, well, you got your Nolan Ryan for Fugosi, which is obviously at the top of the list. You could put your Nimmo for Marcus Semien up there, no question about it. You could put your Rusty Staub for Mickey Lolich, and you can put your Lenny Dykstra for Juan Samuel. You could put them up there. You've got more trades that I'm not talking about Met players leaving via free agency. Okay, you can put up right now the Peter Crow Armstrong trade for Javi Baez. The Mets have always done a lot of those kind of trades. And I have to do a little research. I'm pulling the Peter Crow Armstrong one off the top of my head, which is really, I personally think, and this isn't David Stearns' fault, but this may be an organizational thing. I think they thought Armstrong was a arrogant guy. I have that sneaky suspicion. I saw him give his interview, and it was when he first got drafted, and he was very confident. And I don't know whether or not the Mets like that. And obviously, the Cubs knew what they were doing. I would never have traded Peter Crow Armstrong. Ever. I will never trade a big-time prospect for a 2-month rental, a 1-month rental. Never. Not even for a pitcher, not even for a Randy Johnson at the time. I know the Astros made a deal like that with the Mariners. I forget who they gave up, but they had a rental where they got Johnson for half a year. I don't believe in that. I don't believe you do that. I very rarely have seen that final piece ever come to fruition and bring home a championship. So I don't believe that you can give up a very low-level prospect. You can give up somebody maybe that's even 4 or 5 years away. Again, it's what you got to do to get the guy. If you don't get him on your terms, don't make the deal. Don't trade. It never works out. Peter Crow Armstrong is going to be with the Cubs another 5 years, and then they got to make a decision what they want to do with him, or another 4 years. They got him They got him for at least 7 years total. So, the Mets. Where's Javi Baez now? Playing center field for the Tigers if he's not hurt. Those deals never make any sense. It didn't get the Mets a championship, so that's a failure as a deal as well. So there's a lot of little deals like that the Mets have done over the years to try to, whether it's a final piece. And the Mets have made good trades too. I'm not going to bury them. We all know the Keith Hernandez trade. I mean, they made great trade. They made some really good trades, over the years and bringing in players. So we can go on. But it's more fun to talk about the bad trades, though. It's more fun to talk about what the Mets do poorly than what they do well when they're not winning. It doesn't fit the narrative if I talk about good trades right now and the Mets are losing, and it doesn't work well to talk about bad trades when the Mets are winning, right? So times have been kind of tough for New York baseball right now. The Yankees not looking well, and they've got a ton of injuries as well. I'm not making an excuse for the Yankees on their injuries. I thought the Yankees had enough to hold over for about a week on the injuries, and then when you start to get out past 7-8 games, then the water settles, and what the level of it is what it is. And if you don't have enough talent, then you're not going to win. I do think the Yankees have enough to hold on, and there's one big advantage. The American League is terrible this year compared to the National League, which there will be teams who make the playoffs that are, 7, 8, 9 games over 500 from the wild card, and the Mets are going to be nowhere near that. How many games do you think the Mets are going to lose this year? You think the Mets are going to lose 100 games? You got to be 38 games under 500, 62 and 100 to lose 100. And I would say that probably the more the Mets lose, the better, because then it'll really wake up. Maybe Cohen will realize that he can't wait 2 more years on Stearns. I believe that the Mets need to clean house. I think they need to revamp the entire organization from top to bottom, and they need to bring somebody in here and people who know what they are doing and have a track record. I do not believe that Juan Soto or even a new GM is going to have any sway here without over these veterans without some type of resume. I think that's an absolute must. It's obvious that Soto, who's a good guy, does have idiosyncrasies and he's not old enough I said he's a young guy. I've said it many times, he's only 26. He's got to be taught how to lead, okay? And you need a manager to show him that he respects, not somebody who they just plucked off the street and said anybody can manage. If you think you're going to get a big league baseball player, especially a superstar, to listen to you without having any type of currency like that, or a general manager that's going to back him, which Stearns has never backed any of his coaches. They're all, in his mind, they're disposable. And this is, again, a problem when you bring people in with no resume, including, I'm sorry, you could say Stearns knew what he was doing in Milwaukee. As I'm looking at all of this, I have severe doubts that he was the guy responsible for really running that organization. There had to be other people there who were helping him out. And if I cared enough about going back and looking at it, I'd look it up, but it doesn't make any difference. But watching Stearns run this organization right now, strictly straight into the ground, I can't see him ever being a leader or getting accountability out of his ball players. I don't see that. He's an analytical guy. He doesn't understand that emotional part of the game and the leadership part of the game. And that's a problem, and you're going to see that. Now, I think Cone is a leader. I know you guys might disagree with me out there, but I do believe he has the capability to do that. I think he has to learn, and I think he's smart. When you don't know what to do with it, on a decision, you don't make a decision. And that's kind of what he's doing right here, because he just doesn't know. He's never owned a big league, club before. So that's kind of where we're at today. As the Mets continue to lose, I told you we're going to get off topic, and I'm going to start coming up with some other baseball stories, and we'll see what we can come up with, and maybe we can have some discussions about that, because the Mets are going to become a non-factor the rest of this summer. The only thing we're going to watch is see if the Mets can lose 50 games. If they lose today, they're 18 games under 500 after 90 games. And usually when the bottom falls out like this, it generally falls out very quickly, and you start to rip off these 4 or 5 game losing streaks, win a couple, another 4 or 5. You can actually begin the free fall even faster once you've given up on the season. Plus, they will make some trades. I imagine they're going to be sellers. I don't know what they possibly could sell. Mania got blown out yesterday. Their fielding is terrible all around. The team can't field at all, but again, I don't want to keep going down this road. They made errors yesterday, made more errors today. They can't play a complete ball game. It's very rare. They don't have any pitching. So, I don't know what they're going to trade, but they're going to have to be sellers. So they'll get rid of some of those guys, and they'll stink even a little more. They may bring up some rookies, and if, I don't know how good their farm system looks like. I've looked at it, and they don't have any pitching to bring up. They don't have any pitching to bring up. Boys and girls, men and women, fans of all ages, they don't have any pitching to bring up. Jonah Tong is about the only guy. They don't have any pitching to bring up. And they don't really have anybody up there to be excited about coming up as a hitter. I'm serious. They don't have anybody to bring up. So are we going to be happy that Vientos hits 3 home runs in 4 games, and he's got 11 home runs now, and he's going to bat .213, and he can't play if he's a DH? This is the kind of guy. If we're going to build around Vientos, see, that's another thing. There's another little something with analytics, guys. Analytics, they say that they care about run prevention and fielding, and that's funny, but only look at one number. It's just WAR. And one of the things that analytics do is they like to play guys out of position. I've always felt they don't care. We can make anybody the play. The Mets played 3 or 4 guys out of position every night. Yeah, you got guys hurt, but that doesn't mean go get a first baseman then. Pull one up on them. You don't keep playing people out of position. They look like clowns out there. Okay? Put Beatty at third base. You got to DH Bichette. Okay? You're going to play Vientos at first, who's horrible. You're going to play Bichette at third, who's horrible. And you're going to put Beatty in the outfield, who's not an outfielder. This is what you got? Seriously. Beatty's hitting .213. So, anyhow, this is kind of what it's come to. We'll try to find some other things to talk about. I would love to hear your favorite bad trade in Met history. You've got mine. It's Rusty Staub for Mickey Lolich, going back to 1975. I still remember the baseball card. There was back then, you used to get Topps. It was the only baseball card company, really. And you'd buy packs of cards, and it'd either be in a single pack, if you remember, and you'd open up and have that gum in it. And then you also could buy, if you had the money, these packs of 3. Had like 3 see-through sections, and then it would hang up and it would hang straight down. So it was 4 sections, but one was just had the little hole in it that you can hang on the rack. And then you had the other 3 sections, and you could look and see who was on the front and back of each of those sections. And if, let's say, in 1980, if you wanted to find a George Brett, you could sit there, or a Dave Kingman, or a Tom Seaver, whoever you want was your favorite player back then, Reggie Jackson. You'd look back and forth and see if you had, if there's anybody there who you liked, and now you'd buy that pack hoping there was more players in the middle of it. That's what we used to do with baseball cards. So anybody who's less than, who's younger than, I would say, 50 years old would remember to do that. I think if you're younger than that, you probably bought your cards a little bit differently, maybe not. But I remember that was baseball cards in the 70s. Okay, and I'll save this. You know what we're going to do next time? We're going to talk about baseball cards. I happen to be I'm not a collector, but I do have my favorite sets. All right, and we'll talk about some of those maybe next time I see you. All right, guys, this is baseball. It's July. next week's the All-Star game. Very late coming up this year, but I'll be on tomorrow, or at least by Tuesday, and I would imagine by next week, maybe the Mets will be close to 20 games on the 500 at this rate. Anyway, it's Tony Saracino. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.